Hello, Jeremy here. Today I'm going to talk about All Summer Long, and I'm going to talk about my favorite pressing, which might not be what you would expect. First of all, there's the original US copy that I had once upon a time before my son destroyed it. He was just a baby at the time, so he didn't know what he was doing, and honestly, I didn't listen to it that much. So aside from it being a nice little keepsake, it didn't have a lot of value for me. Outside of that, I have 4 other pressings here. This is the 1992 Japanese pressing. This, I think, is from a digital source. This is from those versions they did in the early 90s that were denoised digitally. Some people don't like the way that these albums sound. I think a lot of the Good Vibrations box set had a lot of that digital denoising going on. This pressing is from that era, and I actually have a couple of these Japanese pressings from 1992. Specifically this and the Summer Days and Summer Nights and the Today and Stack of Tracks. And I really don't mind the way they sound. You know, one thing you have to give to the Japanese pressings is they're pretty flawlessly pressed. They all are really, really quiet, and they all just kind of, they look perfect, almost too perfect, I think some people would say. And of course, with the denoising going on, some might say that this was cleaned up a little bit too much. I'm going to keep this one. I'm not going to sell this. I've sold a lot of other copies of All Summer Long. But these 92 Japanese pressings are ones that I think I'm going to hold on to. I just like that I can put it on the turntable and I know that it's going to play without issue. I will say that it has the same issues on the last couple of tracks that plague all the other mono pressings. It's too bad, because if they had fixed that, this might be maybe my favorite pressing. It wouldn't. But this is good. This is good. And this won't break the bank if you're trying to find a nice, great sounding, clean copy of this to spin on your turntable. They also did some of those reissues in the US, I think in 1994, which I've had a couple of those, and they sound pretty much the same. Next up, we have the Analog Productions reissue. This came out in 2015. This is mastered by the master Kevin Gray, and this sounds wonderful. I mean, it sounds better than the 92 pressing, but it is still plagued by those issues with the tape on the last couple of tracks. You know, Don't Back Down sounds awful, and I would argue that Drive-In and Girls on the Beach also don't sound great. Girls on the Beach is almost there, but it still feels like it's being held back by something. Pretty much every mono pressing out there has these issues, and it's a bummer because it's such a great album, and we all know that Brian, he mixed in mono because that's what he could hear, and also mono was just the way they did things back then. So you're thinking, okay, album doesn't sound great in mono. How's it sound in stereo? Well, here is the 2015 Analog Productions stereo pressing, and the stereo sounds amazing. It doesn't have any of those issues on the last couple of tracks. I think a lot of people would agree that this is one of Chuck Britz's better stereo mixes from that period of time. And it's beautiful, but there's a problem. The first 2 tracks are not in stereo, they are duophonic. And that is frustrating because the rest of it sounds wonderful. And you would have thought that at this point in re-releasing this album, they would just maybe put in some newer remixes. I know some of those newer stereo remixes of I Get Around are not great. I prefer the 2012 one to the newer one that's on Sounds of Summer. But All Summer Long I have always felt that one has sounded good, the remix that Mark Lynette did. And that would have gone great on here. It's mixed in a very similar way that the rest of these are mixed, I believe, with the vocals centered and the instruments on the right and left. But they didn't do that. I think Analog Productions said they wanted to be true to the sound of the original, which, okay. In both cases, in the mono and the stereo, this was a prime opportunity to finally do justice to this amazing album. And you can hear better versions of Don't Back Down in mono. I believe the one on the Good Vibrations box sounds really nice. So basically you have these Analog Productions versions, and you're thinking, well, okay, this is probably the best that you can get. There's a compromise happening on both albums. So I guess I'm just gonna have to settle for one of these two if I'm going after the best pressing. That's kind of true. But there is another pressing, which I will admit I put on a lot more often than I put on the Analog Productions. This is the 1980 or 1981, I'm not sure, 1980 something. Green label. This was pressed from the master tapes, and it's actually missing two songs. Well, songs. It's missing Carl's Big Chance. Then it's also missing our favorite recording sessions, which is not my least favorite bit of lame comedy dialogue. I would probably give that to the one that's on Shutdown Volume 2. But it's up there. And I know some people say, well, I love that. That's part of, the original vision for the album. I like the little asides. I think they're funny. That's great. I don't think they're quite as cringy as a lot of people think they are, but I generally don't mind that it's missing from this version of the album. You can probably hear my son crying in the background. He's going down for a nap right now. His mom's in there. I haven't just abandoned him to do this. So, I would say if I had to get rid of two tracks, those are the two tracks I would get rid of. I like Carl's Big Chance. I think that one does kind of hurt. I know it's not an amazing track, but it's a short album, and so having it there at the end of side one kind of helps. The reason I like it so much is the first two tracks, I Get Around and All Summer Long, they are not desynced duophonically like they are on the other stereo pressings that I've heard. This one almost sounds mono, and I've listened to it a bunch of times. I can maybe barely hear some bass and treble frequencies being separated, kind of, but not really. It just sounds like they put the mono cuts at the front here, and then the rest of the album continues in stereo. And while it's still not perfect, to me, I love that I can just put this on, put the needle down, and hear the whole album sounding really nice and not something that hurts the ears. Especially since it's the beginning of the album, you just kind of want to start it off with a bang. And so to be able to start it off in mono and then have it transition to stereo, it sounds so much better than the duophonic desyncing on all the other pressings. So for that reason, I play this one the most. And these were cut from analog tape. They were done before everything got digital, and they were cut by a guy named Jay. You can often see Jay in the dead wax here. And Jay did a great job with these green labels. You should seek them out if you haven't. They are a cheap way to get really great sounding Beach Boys records, especially the ones that come later in the catalog, like Wild Honey, Smiley Smile, Pet Sounds. Those don't have any of the missing tracks that are missing from a lot of these earlier green labels. That's pretty much it. There's a new pressing that is out, that came out a couple of years ago, and it's an orange disc, and a lot of people were wondering what was going to be on that one, since it said it was going to be in stereo. You know, are they going to finally give us the first few tracks in proper stereo? And all that one is I think, a digital pressing of the Analog Productions master. So, it's a nice way to get a cheaper version of the Analog Productions stereo, which has been out of print for a while and is way too expensive on eBay and Discogs. You could seek that one out. It's kind of a tie for me between that one and this green label. Again, some of you might think I'm terrible for liking the stereo more than the mono. Some of you might think it's heresy to listen to the album without Carl's big chants and our favorite recording sessions. But this is just my personal take. It's a great album. Maybe one day we'll get a front-to-back stereo mix. And maybe one day those last couple of mono tracks will get cleaned up. I don't know. I'm not super clear on all the issues, and I'm not sure how much those last couple of mono tracks can be cleaned up. If anybody knows, feel free to comment down below. But that's it for today. What's your favorite pressing of this album? Do you prefer the mono? Do you like the stereo? Do you not like this album? Tell us why. Obviously, this wasn't a comprehensive list of every single pressing for All Summer Long. Just the ones that I've heard and owned. And it's a great album, and you should own it on vinyl. So, happy hunting.